Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we're playing Mount and Blade Bannerlord and I'm doing another strengths and weaknesses video. This time we're doing the Khuzait Khanate and this one is probably one of my favorite factions. They can be challenging but I find them to be very fun to play as. And so they're loosely based off of the steppe peoples, the Mongol type areas, Cumans, that sort of culture. Very loose based, but it makes it very, very fun. And so we're just going to start her off with our troop strengths for the Khuzaits. Alright, starting us off for strengths, we have the Khuzait Heavy Lancer, which is an excellent heavy cavalry unit. You can see here, riding of 150, which is nice and high, pole arms of 130 and one-handed of 130. Makes them an excellent troop. They're pretty well like heavy armored, as are their horses, and of course using the steppe war horse, they outclass a lot of horses in the game. The only real competition comes from the Aserai horses for the Khuzait. So excellent troop. I think that a lot of people overlook the Khuzait Heavy Lancers, but in my opinion, they're the 5th best cavalry troops overall. Yes, there are 4 troops better than them, but 2 of those are Vlandian troops, and then you have the Empire and the Aserai, so they're only competition comes from other really cavalry-heavy factions. But the Khuzait Heavy Lancer is definitely an excellent troop with a good shield, good spear, great armor, and of course excellent stats. So that is a strength for them. Another strength is going to be their top-tier infantry archer, which is a Khuzait Marksman. These ones are the 4th best overall, so they're only beat out by the Battanian archers and the Aserai archers, so the Khuzaits really do have a pretty good infantry archer. They come with 2 quivers, which means they don't run out of arrows very fast, and they of course have the steppe warbow, which is excellent. Pretty decent armor for infantry and solid stats, so you can see one-handed and bow are both 130, and athletics is 130, making them pretty fast on their feet and able to run a lot longer than a lot of infantry troops in the game. So the Khuzait Marksman is one of the best archers in the game. I love them. They work excellent, and of course just because of the way that the Khuzaits work, I typically just load my castles out with them, which makes, you know, it really hard for enemy troops to take your castles. So I think the Khuzait Marksman is definitely a strength to be talked about with the Khuzaits. In that same thread, for a cavalry-centric faction, they definitely have an excellent heavy infantry unit. So the Khuzait Darkhan is one of my favorite infantry units in the game. They're about the 3rd best in my opinion for all factions. They have a solid typical loadout of a nice long polearm, a sword or saber, and a shield. And of course they're very heavily armored, so they're excellent troops. You can see our polearm skill is 130, one-handed is 130, and athletics is 130, so real balanced all around, good units. They're excellent against cavalry because, like I said, they've got that polearm and a high polearm skill and really good armor. So they work well as a foil to the enemy cavalry, which might be trying to outflank your Khuzait cavalry. I find them to be an excellent unit, but because they're also equipped with sabers, they're really, really good against archers and infantry, so they work really well defending fortresses or assaulting them. So the Khuzait Darkhan is definitely an infantry unit that you should not sleep on. They're really, really good. But of course, the greatest strength for the Khuzait is their mounted archers, which are by far the best mounted archers in the entire game, and they have both of them. They have number 1 and 2 overall for the best mounted archers in the game. So the first one to look at is your standard one that you get from the Khuzait Nomads, which is your basic recruits. You get them all the way down here to the Khuzait Heavy Horse Archer, riding of 130, bow of 130, one-handed of 130. Pretty dang solid armor, so they're heavily armored. Their horses are also heavily armored. They come with 2 quivers of arrows. They are just excellent mounted archers that put pretty much everyone else in the game to shame. There's only one unit that they don't put to shame, and that unit is also a Khuzait unit, and it's also a mounted archer. So the Khuzait Khan's Guard are unbelievably good. So first of all, you look at the stats: riding of 200, polearm of 220, bow of 260. These ones are ridiculously good mounted troops. These ones are slightly less good on their feet than the marksman, mounted heavy archers are, because they usually don't come with a one-handed weapon, but they have that polearm on horseback, which makes them a really good shot cavalry, and they also have ridiculously good bows and a really good bow skill, which makes them the best mounted archers in the game. So the Khan's Guard are among the best lancers in the game and heavy shot cavalry, and also they are by far the best mounted archers. So the greatest strengths of the Khuzait people in this game are archers in general, but specifically mounted archers, but they're also not weak in infantry or shot cavalry. So really, really good units. As far as weaknesses for them go, they don't have a good two-handed infantry. So much like the Empire, they don't have anything in that offering, no line breakers or heavy axemen or anything like that. The Darkhan is their only tier 5 infantry troop, and while they are very, very good and they're equipped with a pike, so they're good against infantry and cavalry, they're not a good two-handed infantry, so they're not good at breaking down barriers and doors, they're not good at breaking through enemy shield formations. You're going to have to utilize your cavalry for that, which, you know, the Khuzaits can, but it is a weakness not having a good two-handed infantry troop. The other weakness being that your low-level footmen and nomads, so like the two basic ones, have no pole arms and really, really poor armor, so there's a high attrition. And because they have no pole arms, they're weak against cavalry, which, you know, stops being a problem once you get them up to spearmen and higher, because then they do have pole arms. But it can be a decent amount of time before you've got a lot of your higher level infantry for Khuzaits. Another weakness being that their cavalry, their melee cavalry, doesn't have throwing weapons. Most factions, melee cavalry does have usually javelins or something like that, which makes them a pseudo-skirmisher and also good at taking out infantry and archers on a pass. Whereas the Khuzaits, because they focus so much on horse archers, their melee cavalry doesn't have that as an option. And then the other one is that your top tier troops lack diversity. You can see that there are only 4 top tier here, and then you have the top tier for the noble troop tree, which is the Khan's Guard. That's not a lot of diversity. Basically, you've got a heavy infantry unit, a marksman, a lancer, and then 2 varieties of heavy horse archers. That's it. So there's only 5 total options for your best troops in here, and there's not a lot of diversity, so it's much harder to specialize. This is fine most of the time because the Khuzait troops, the top tier troops, are as good as they are, but it can be a weakness that can be very easily exploited by, let's say, the Sturgians, who have much better infantry and then can back that up with skirmishers, heavy line breakers, and passable archers. So it is possible to outclass the Khuzaits because they lack diversity in their troops. So now on the topic of general strengths and weaknesses, we'll start out with strengths. You do have well-equipped infantry as a strength, so they have the blade, polearm, and a shield, and sometimes throwing weapons, which makes them a very well-rounded infantry unit. Other than that, you've got early access to cavalry, so when you look at it from the nomad to the tribal warrior, it's 1 step. Most other factions are 2 steps to cavalry. For the most part. So it can be very quick as a Khuzait to build up a force where you're primarily cavalry, which makes you excellent in the open field. Other than that, the Khuzait troops generally have pretty good armor for their class. They're among the best armored in the entire game, and all of your archer troops, which there are a lot of in the Khuzaits, all of them come with 2 quivers, so you have lots of arrows. No other faction has as many arrows as Khuzait troops do. Another advantage is, for such a small area, there are plenty of horses, so it's one of my, if I'm not playing as a Khuzait, I will generally do trade runs to the Khuzait territory to trade for horses because they've got such a good supply of horses at all times. And since you're going to be doing primarily cavalry as a Khuzait, it's good to have lots of horses. And of course, you also have the size and location of the kingdom is an advantage. So it's the second smallest, I believe, behind the Battanian territory, but it's very well focused over here, and you don't have that much to worry about. You share a long-ish border with the Empire, but most of that is blocked by a lake, and then you have slight contact with the Sturgians and slight with the Aserai, but not really that much. It's a well-contained area that's easy to defend, and especially if you're going heavy, like you have a lot of Khuzait cavalry in your troops, it's really, really easy to defeat all of the enemy armies on your home turf, because the steppe war horses are way better at fighting on the rocky, uneven terrain of most of the Khuzait area than any other troops in the game. As far as general weaknesses, besieging castles can be difficult for Khuzait armies because all of your cavalry troops, although they translate decently well on foot, are not as good as most other factions, infantry and archers, just because of the lower athletics, and so they don't move around as good. So besieging castles can be a challenge for them. Also, you do start out with a small kingdom that has very few lords, so if you're at war with more than one enemy, it can be difficult to raise sizable armies, and you'll find yourself, even though your troops may be much better on the whole, like your individual war parties, the other kingdoms will just overwhelm you with numbers. So it can be a challenge to effectively start out the game, but once you've taken out a kingdom, like if when I started the Khuzaits, I like to target the Sturgians first, because the Sturgians lack a really good alternative to the Khuzait cavalry, so it makes it pretty easy to steamroll over the Khuzaits. I mean the Sturgians as the Khuzaits. And once I've done that, oftentimes I'll go after the Aserai, because although they are way more of a challenge, they're nice and isolated, and once they're eliminated, then there's no challenge in the game for the Khuzait cavalry once the Aserai are gone, just because of their high mobility of their mounted archers mostly. And of course, lastly, for general weaknesses, just slow infantry. If you're playing as Khuzaits and you're going afield, so you're trying to conquer the Empire or something like that, you have to make sure you bring plenty of horses for your non-mounted troops to ride, otherwise it slows your army down way too much. And this is often a trap, so you'll find great success going deep into enemy territory, and as you lose horses or need to upgrade troops and start running out of them, you're going to slow down more and more and more, and then you're going to try retreating to get back to Khuzait territory to refill your supplies and stocks and horses and all that sort of stuff, and then the slower enemy armies will be able to catch up with you and wipe out your party or your army. So the slow infantry of the Khuzaits typically makes me recommend leaving them behind. So you're going to want to protect your castles and towns with your archers and your footmen, and you're going to want to only go afield with cavalry. That's just the way that I prefer to use the Khuzait. So that's it for general strengths and weaknesses. As far as the best combat strategies for the Khuzaits, on the field, I try to focus on 100% cavalry armies because it is the Khuzaits' greatest strength. And it's hard for every other faction to try actually countering them, just because of how high quality the Khuzait cavalry is. And a fun strategy to do is use a smaller army, so in numbers, just take your elite Khan's Guard and heavy mounted archers and heavy lancers from the Khuzait side, a small force of like 250 of them, and attack large settlements. So you besiege a castle or a town or something like that, and then you can trick the larger garrison into sallying out to fight you, and then you have a giant advantage. Because the Khuzait cavalry, especially against most stock garrisons in the game, are good for like 5-to-1 odds minimum. And so if you can get them out on the open field, you can annihilate them, and then it's really easy to take their castles and towns, even, using cavalry troops. So one of the strategies I like to use with them is to trick larger garrisons into sallying out, because the AI isn't smart enough to know that your cavalry is way better than theirs, even though they outnumber you 6-to-1 or whatever. Another one is, like I already said, the infantry and the archers, because they're slow, but they are extremely good troops, use them for defense. They don't need to go out in the field with you. You can effectively use all cavalry in the Khuzait army for, general warfare. You leave your really good archers and infantry to defend your castles. They make an excellent defense force and are usually good for 2 to 5 enemy troops to 1 on defending any of your home castles. So leave them at home. Don't take them in the field with you. And so then, just as a general open field strategy combat, it's going to be a relatively aggressive one. You just use your mounted archers to skirmish, and then you utilize controlled lancer charges. So your lancers and your Khan's Guard, I would use them in strategic charges. So like I said, you form them up, charge full line, and as soon as the kills start to slow down, you reform them and recharge, and you just keep your skirmishers skirmishing the entire time. It's like a 99% success rate with incredible odds stacked against them, just because of how good the cavalry is. So it's a simple enough strategy, and like I said, that's pretty much it for the Khuzaits. So I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful, but that's all for today. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.